Imagine an evening when the sun seems reluctant to appear, as if nature itself wanted to avoid witnessing what was about to happen. At the top of Mount Golgotha, a place marked by the pain and final sentence of so many, a Roman soldier stood out amidst the curious and fearful crowd. He was not a mere observer. He was an experienced centurion, a hardened man who had witnessed countless deaths, an executor accustomed to the cold and impersonal role of Roman justice. For him, that crucifixion would be just another one among many. However, something in that scene was out of the ordinary. The man nailed to the cross did not seem like an ordinary criminal. Instead of hatred or despair, there was a unique presence, a silent strength emanating from his suffering. The environment seemed to carry a spiritual weight, as if every second was part of a larger plan than any empire could conceive. But what the soldier was unaware of at that moment, and what you are about to discover, is that his destiny would change forever after that encounter. The brutal act he was about to carry out would become the first step toward a profound transformation, a path that transcended military duty and touched the deepest parts of the human soul. So, get ready. In this video, you will follow the events that unfolded after the crucifixion, understand what happened to this soldier, and why his story is so impactful to this day. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue bringing stories that inspire, provoke reflection, and rekindle the flame of hope. Now, hold on tight and join us on this journey of faith and transformation. For a Roman centurion, duty was always above any emotion or personal consideration. From the first steps in his military career, these men were molded to follow orders without hesitation, maintain discipline at all costs, and ensure the unquestionable authority of Rome. The training was arduous, relentless, and constant, teaching them to face chaotic battle scenarios, lead 100 men under storms of arrows, spears, and swords, and to suppress any sign of weakness. Compassion, empathy, and remorse rarely found space in those hearts, accustomed to the brutality of war and the coldness of public executions. That particular day, the centurion was overseeing another execution, one among many he had already witnessed. To him, seeing men hung on crosses was part of the job, a ruthless yet effective means to keep the population under control and demonstrate the empire's strength. As the crowd awaited, sometimes fearful, sometimes curious, the execution of Jesus of Nazareth, the officer remained steadfast, not averting his gaze. However, behind the well-polished armor and the inflexible demeanor, something was beginning to bother him. There was something strange there, a different atmosphere. He had seen hardened criminals begging for mercy, rebellious leaders spitting insults, and condemned man after condemned man losing their dignity in the face of imminent death. He had seen men cry, shout, curse their enemies, try to resist even with their wrists pierced by nails. But that prisoner, the man named Jesus, did not react like the others. No words of hate, no desperate pleas, just a silent and serene posture, an inner strength that defied all logic of an officer accustomed to dealing with pain and fear. As the centurion observed every detail, every breath, every contained gesture, he felt an unknown unease rising within him. Who was that man who faced death with such dignity? How could he explain such tranquility in the face of the impending ordeal? He did not yet know, but this question that was beginning to hammer in his mind would be the starting point for a profound and inevitable transformation. Even before Jesus' last breath, a seed of doubt and curiosity had already been planted in the centurion's heart, promising to take root and completely transform his understanding of faith, truth, and what it truly meant to serve a greater power. The centurion watched everything attentively. It was not new for him to see a prisoner being humiliated before the crucifixion. Crowns of thorns, slaps to the face, beatings with rods, and mockery were part of the cruel repertoire that preceded death on the cross. However, that day, Jesus' behavior stood out from everything the officer had previously witnessed. While the soldiers laughed and shouted, proclaiming mockingly, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Jesus endured the pain and insults in silence. There was no plea for clemency, nor a look of hatred. He simply accepted the burden imposed upon him without apparent resistance. When Jesus took up the cross to follow the narrow streets of Jerusalem, stumbling on the uneven path, the centurion continued to watch him with growing curiosity. He had seen desperate criminals, screaming, fighting to the end to escape their fate. But that was not the case. There was something deeply strange about Jesus' serenity. Every faltering step, every contained groan, every fall under the weight of that cross seemed to carry a meaning greater than mere submission to a death sentence. Witnessing this unusual scene, the officer, whose role was to maintain order and impartiality, began to feel an inner discomfort. That silent and firm posture in the face of the empire's violence did not fit the patterns he knew. He did not quite understand what was happening, but with each passing moment, he grew certain that he was witnessing something far beyond an ordinary execution, something that, sooner or later, would shake his deepest convictions. Are you enjoying this story of faith? Please bless this video with your like. Jesus loves you. Despite the growing unease in his heart, the centurion strictly fulfilled his duty. He was the one who ordered Simon of Cyrene to help Jesus carry the cross, not out of kindness, but out of pure logistical necessity. It was essential that the execution proceeded as planned, without unforeseen events or delays. That officer could not afford to hesitate or show any feeling that might compromise Rome's authority. But as he watched the weakened figure of Jesus walking alongside Simon, a question kept echoing within him. Who is this man who, even in so much pain, manages to remain so serene? Around him, the scene was marked by contrasts. With each step toward Golgotha, Jesus' anguished silence competed with the crowd's shouts. Some mocked and made cruel jokes. Others shed restrained tears, unable to fully comprehend what they were witnessing. Amid that confusion, the centurion noticed that even the religious leaders, supposedly defenders of faith and law, seemed driven by hatred and rancor. At the same time, small, discreet groups looked at Jesus with sadness and reverence, as if sensing something sacred was happening there. And so, the officer, who had never imagined questioning Rome's orders, began to feel that there was something deep and mysterious surrounding that prisoner and his fate. Upon arriving at Golgotha, known as the place of the skull, what the centurion had witnessed so many times before occurred. Jesus was nailed to the cross, raised between two criminals, exposed to the severe and indifferent gaze of the empire. For the officer, accustomed to observing the reactions of the condemned, everything seemed to follow the usual cruel script. In that scene of extreme pain, it was common to hear insults, shouts, and desperate attempts to escape the inevitable. However, once again, Jesus surprised. Instead of cursing his tormentors, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Upon hearing those words, the centurion felt a chill run through his body. How could a man, amidst torture and humiliation, plead for the forgiveness of his own executioners? That attitude did not align with the usual despair of the condemned. It was something of a different nature, something that transcended the boundaries of human logic. The condemned man's prayer echoed in the Roman soldier's mind, planting a seed of doubt that time could not easily smother. Forgiveness for those crucifying him. The centurion began to realize that before him was more than just a prisoner, more than a man about to die. The faith, serenity, and mercy demonstrated by Jesus became a profound mystery, capable of questioning everything the officer believed. While some soldiers gambled for Jesus' garments, treating his pain as mere entertainment, the crowd persisted in mocking without a hint of remorse. In that environment of cruelty and contempt, the centurion, accustomed to the brutality of executions, began to feel something new and disturbing within himself. Jesus' attitude, his prayer for the forgiveness of his wrongdoers, affected the officer in a way that no shouting, no plea for mercy, or look of hatred ever could. It was as if those words silently pierced every layer of indifference that the warrior had built up over the years, wounding him with a touch of compassion and astonishment. Then, suddenly, the sky changed. It was noon, but darkness fell over the place, not like threatening storm clouds, but like a supernatural shroud of mourning. For 3 hours, the world seemed to plunge into a heavy silence, a mute pain that enveloped everyone without distinction. The centurion, who had always prided himself on maintaining a firm posture in front of men, now felt his heart tighten with an unknown fear. Something extraordinary was happening, something that no military strategy, execution protocol, or mental preparation could explain. The officer did not understand what it was, but he knew he was not facing a simple death. It was something greater, deeper, and in that instant, without fully comprehending, the centurion felt that his life would never be the same. Amid the shouts and mocking laughter, the centurion heard Jesus' voice once more. Now, even hanging on a cross, he showed care for those he loved, entrusting his own mother to the closest disciple, ensuring she would not be left helpless. There was no hatred, no despair, no lament directed at himself. There was indeed a sincere concern for others, even in the midst of unimaginable pain. The crowd did not lower their tone. "If you are truly the Son of God, come down from the cross," some shouted. Religious leaders, supposedly dedicated to faith, mocked. "He saved so many, but he cannot save himself." Even the criminals crucified beside Jesus joined in the insults. Yet, the man at the center of that terrifying scene remained silent. His tranquility did not seem like weakness or surrender, but an incomprehensible inner strength from the Roman soldier's perspective. Then, in a final act, Jesus murmured, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And bowing his head, he departed from this world. For the centurion, it was as if everything around him stopped. That moment, so simple and so profound, carried a weight he could not explain. An intense feeling enveloped him, as if he had witnessed something not only remarkable but truly divine. That day remained vivid in the centurion's memory. The sudden darkness, the trembling, shaking the ground, and the temple veil torn from top to bottom. All these events seemed like creation itself, crying out that the man crucified before him was not an ordinary condemned man. The phrase, "Father, forgive them," continued to echo in his mind, repeating with every beat of his heart. Who, amidst so much violence, could offer forgiveness to their own executors? Who would be capable of demonstrating such profound love for those who tortured him? Something within the centurion, once solid as a Roman wall, began to crumble. The coldness, the iron discipline, the certainty that strength came from the sword, and blind obedience began to fall apart. At that moment before the cross, the soldier understood. Truly, this was the Son of God. In saying this, he was not only recognizing an extraordinary fact, but also breaking away from everything he had learned about power and authority. There, before his eyes, true strength did not arise from fear, but from love, humility, and sacrifice. The centurion's declaration did not come solely because he had witnessed supernatural signs. It was the result of everything he had observed that day. The dignified silence of Jesus, the prayer asking forgiveness of his enemies, the nobility, even in extreme pain. For the first time, that Roman officer saw beyond the brutality of his duty. He had witnessed the essence of what is divine, and that would forever change the way he viewed the world. As the crowd dispersed, he remained motionless, gazing at the horizon, his mind flooded with questions and his heart heavy as never before. In the morning, he had arrived as an executor, fulfilling orders without hesitation, but now he felt transformed, almost as if he had awakened from a long sleep. His declaration, "Truly, this was the Son of God," was not a frivolous comment. It was born from what he had witnessed, an unjustly condemned man who, even under torture, showed neither hatred nor bitterness. On the contrary, he demonstrated an indescribable understanding and love, capable of shaking the most rigid convictions of a Roman officer. With each passing second, the centurion reflected on his role in that event. He had overseen the execution of someone who not only did not resist, but also forgave his executioners, without guilt or malice in his gaze. It was a compassion that the soldier had never encountered in his years serving the empire, facing enemies, practicing violence, and imposing brute force. There, at the foot of the cross, the centurion understood that in that death, he had witnessed a force much greater than Rome's swords, a force that came from sacrifice, love, and faith. Upon returning home that night, the centurion carried an unknown weight, guilt. Who was that man he had helped crucify, and why would he forgive? Precisely because of him, a soldier obedient to Rome's orders. Before, The execution would have been just another grim task on his long list of duties. Now, it had become a profound milestone in his journey, a turning point that shook everything he once considered right. In the days that followed, a whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed the officer. Jesus' words still echoed in his mind, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." This phrase left no room for forgetting. Even amidst the demands of military life, the persistent question did not leave him. How could someone on the brink of death demonstrate such kindness, compassion, and mercy? Then, strange and incredible rumors arose. Jesus' tomb was empty. Hearing these whispered stories from one side to the other, the centurion felt something new bloom in his heart. He did not yet know what it all meant, but gradually he realized that this man, whose death he had witnessed, was not just any condemned person. He would understand sooner or later that his encounter with Jesus would forever change his way of seeing the world and the meaning of his own life. Each new day brought more unrest to his heart. Memories of Golgotha, Jesus' words, and the serene posture in the face of death repeatedly returned to his mind. He felt compelled to seek explanations for what he had witnessed. The vision of Roman power, until then unquestionable, began to pale in the face of that profound and impactful experience. The hardness forged in battles and executions, which once formed the shield of his soul, began to crack. Upon hearing about Jesus' supposed resurrection, the centurion did not react with surprise or skepticism. Within himself, he already sensed that this man was different, someone whose influence did not end with death. The notion that the tomb did not signify the end only confirmed what his heart now understood. At that moment, the centurion ceased to be just a Roman soldier, an impassive executor. He became someone transformed by the grace he had witnessed on that cross. For the first time, he felt the weight of forgiveness, the greatness of faith, and the power of redemption. It was the beginning of a new journey, a path toward understanding what is truly divine. The story of the Roman centurion teaches us that no one is beyond the reach of divine grace. Think about this. A cold man, accustomed to violence and pain, was profoundly touched upon witnessing Jesus' death. He began the day merely fulfilling orders, but ended by declaring Christ's divinity. Just as it happened with the centurion, we are all invited to rethink the meaning of the cross in our lives. Jesus' sacrifice was not a mere event in the past, but an act of love that echoes through eternity. The cross paved the way for everyone, without exception, to find forgiveness, reconciliation, and a new way of living. If this message reached you, if in some way your heart was touched, do not ignore that feeling. Allow the transformation that occurred in the centurion's heart to also inspire your spiritual journey. The cross is more than a symbol of suffering. It is an invitation to a true encounter with God's love. Today, just like the centurion, you too can begin a journey of faith and renewal. And if you want to help this message reach more people, consider becoming a member of this channel, leaving your like and subscribing. I am leaving 2 special videos here for you. One talks about the story of Job's suffering and how he continued to worship even after losing everything. And in the other, I show you how the 10 plagues affected Egypt. Go check them out. Every gesture of yours helps us spread this word of hope and life. For now, I bid you farewell. May God bless your journey.